what will you be judged on, etc. So that's right after this session. Okay, Lucas, all yours.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go ahead and start sharing my screen again, so hopefully everyone can see this. All
Yep,
right, so yeah. Before we get started, just to kind of see like where everyone is at in terms of like programming, could you guys type in the chat, just say like, if you've had experience with programming before, just like, what it is, whether it's Python, Java, HTML, even if it's Scratch, right? Just go ahead and just type in the chat. If not, it's completely fine, but it might be.
So Lucas,
Yep.
Sorry about that. So while you're asking them to type it in, the audience, I'm going to send you a link to a Google form. So mainly to take attendance of who all attended today. So all the participants of the hackathon, not the mentors, all the participants, please do fill in the Google form. I'm going to send a Google form in chat right now. Okay, so it's mandatory that you fill it in today. Thank you. Go ahead, Lucas, sorry.
Yeah, so I'll just give you guys a second to do that. I see a lot of HTML and Python.
Hey guys, Ansh here. We are recording this, right? Somebody in chat was just asking in Discord.
Yes.
Yeah, we are recording this and we are live on YouTube as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, cool. So the good news is Flutter, if you've done Java before, the coding in Flutter is pretty similar to that. And also, if you've done like web development before, there's a lot of concepts that will be similar. So I think, if you've had experience in any of those, and even if you haven't, it shouldn't be too difficult to pick up. All right. So let's go ahead and just jump right into it. So why Flutter, right? There's a lot of different ways to create mobile applications, whether that's Android native, iOS native using Swift, that kind of stuff. Why are we going to use Flutter? So there's a couple of main reasons that I think are the most important. One is there's a single code base for both iOS and Android. What that means is you only have to code your app one time and it works on both iOS devices and Android devices, right? So if you weren't using Flutter, right, you would probably have to code your app twice using two different coding languages. And every time you want to release an update, you would have to, update both. But with Flutter, it's really easy. You might have to make a couple of tweaks, but otherwise it's going to be the same code base that you can use for both. Another good thing about Flutter is the ability to hot reload. And what that means is as you're making changes in your app, you can just hot reload and basically you'll see these changes instantly, right? So you don't have to, delete your app, run it again, go through that entire process when you just want to change a single text. If you click hot reload, it'll just appear instantly. And then the third reason, and obviously there's many more, I'm just going to go over 3 today, is that it has a really intuitive widget system for building UIs. I'll explain this a bit more in a second, but the way you create UI is using these like building blocks, right? Kind of like Legos, and you can put them together and, you can make really good looking apps pretty easily. So yeah. And these are just some examples of apps that have been built using Flutter. Flutter is still a relatively new language, and now is actually a pretty good time to start learning it because there's a lot of new things being built for it every day. There's a lot more support, and yeah. So widgets in Flutter. So this is what I was talking about earlier. So what are widgets? Widgets are kind of like the building blocks of Flutter, right? Basically, if you were to open an app, let's say Instagram, right? Every part of it, if it were built in Flutter, would be counted as a widget, right? So if you had a page, that would be a widget. Inside of the page, everything on there is also a widget. So if you look at an icon button, let's say like the search bar button, that is a widget. The search bar itself is a widget, right? All the text is going to be a widget as well. So that's basically how we're going to be building apps within Flutter. So I think it makes a bit more sense once we actually get into it, when we actually start coding. But that's kind of the basic idea of Flutter. All right, so stateful versus stateless widgets. So this is something that's a bit more advanced. I'm not sure if you don't have to worry about it too much if you're just making a simple app. But basically, just so you know, the simple distinction between stateful and stateless, you can kind of think of it as being dataful or dataless. So let me give you an example of a stateless. Let me give you an example of a stateless widget. So let's say you're pressing a share button on some kind of social media, right? When you do that, it'll give you an option to say, message it to someone or share it on a different social media, right? But you're not keeping track of the number of shares. Therefore, you're not really storing any data. On the other hand, with a stateful widget, let's say you're pressing the like button, right? When you do that, you're storing data about the number of likes, right? When you click on it, the number of likes is going to go up. If you uncheck it, it's going to go down, right? So that's an example of a stateful widget. But if you're just starting out with Flutter, you won't be making too many of these widgets on your own, which I'll talk about in a second, because Flutter has a lot of built-in widgets. But generally just know that if you're creating a page, right, if you're creating a widget for a new page, let's say like a home screen or an account screen, we want that to be a stateful widget. Okay, so I know right now just explaining this without looking at anything might not make too much sense, but hopefully when I show you some examples, it should be a bit more clear. So let's continue going on. One more thing about widgets is that widgets have different properties. Right? So basically all widgets will have some things that you can adjust in them. That includes things like the color of the widget, things like height and width, right? And there's more stuff about it. One more thing about widgets is that most widgets will have either a child or a children. Basically what that means is, within a widget, you can put more inside of it. So if I were to go back to this tree diagram, we can see that the relationship between each widget is going to be parent and child, which means that this widget is a child of AppBar, and AppBar is a child of Scaffold, and so on and so forth. So again, hopefully this will make sense when we put it together. So now let's just go over a few widgets that are most commonly used when you're building apps. And these are all built into Flutter, right? So what that means is you don't have to know how to create each one from scratch. You just need to know how to implement it and then, change the properties that are important to you and whatever app you're trying to create. So the first one, this is probably the most basic one that you'll be using. It's a text widget. Basically it just displays text, right? So you would just say text, right? You're saying the widget that you want to use. You do parentheses, and then inside of it, you would put some properties. So the main properties you would be using here is, first of all, whatever text you want to display. You would put that within quotation marks, right? Then you can change some properties of the text, such as size, color, and weight. And you would do that by saying style and giving it a text style, right? And you can see that we do that here. So I'll go over that when we get into the actual coding portion in a second. We're just gonna kind of go through all of these first. The next thing is Scaffold, AppBar, and floating action button. Okay, so Scaffold is a little bit weird because it's not something that you can, directly see on the screen, like a button or a text, right? The way Scaffold works is you put it at the top of the widget tree. If we go back yet again, right? We put it at the top of the widget tree, and then everything goes underneath it. And that basically just helps with things like, making sure that everything is in the right place. And it also gives you access to a couple more built-in Flutter widgets, such as the app bar, which we can see at the top here. That's just kind of a built-in thing that's easy to display a title for your app. It also gives you access to things like the floating action button, which is just a special type of button that you can see here. So yeah, generally when you're creating a new page, and I'll go over this again in a second, it's good to put a scaffold at the top just because, it makes your app, it makes it look better, and also gives you the ability to use some of these kind of shortcuts, if you will. All right, next thing, this is also super important. These are containers. So containers are basically, well, if you think of a container, it's like a rectangle or like a box. And these can serve a couple of different purposes. Generally, you can use them to, decorate and position child widgets, right? That also means you can just, put a box around something and then give it a color, right? You can give it a rounded corner and just put it behind some kind of text. Another good thing about it is it gives your children widgets, you can give it some spacing by using padding and margin. And so for those of you who don't really know the difference between padding and margin, the main thing is padding is going to be on the inside. So if you look at this kind of diagram right here, you can see that padding is adjusting the space between the child and the outside of the container. And then the margin one, it's a little bit harder to tell from this picture, but basically it's going to be how far away it is from the other objects that are there or other widgets. But yeah. And then the next thing is buttons. So Flutter has a ton of different pre-built buttons, but they all work the same way, right? So just like a real life button, what it does is you click on it and then it performs some kind of function, right? It's the same case in Flutter. So we can see here, there's all kinds of different ones, raised buttons, icon buttons, floating action buttons, but they all do the same thing, right? You have an on pressed, which is basically saying, hey, when I click this button, I want you to do this. And we also have a child, which is basically just, what do you want the button to look like, right? Do you want text on the button? Do you want an icon on the button, et cetera, et cetera? But yeah, so we'll be using some of those today. Okay, so rows and columns. These are also super important. And this is kind of setting up the layout of your app. One thing to note about rows and columns that's different from, say, containers is, go back, that instead of taking a single child and putting one widget inside of it, rows and columns both take in children. That's basically an array or a list of different widgets. What that means is basically you can put a bunch of widgets together and it'll orient them either vertically up and down or left to right horizontally. So yeah, so rows and columns, and I'll show you examples of these in a second. They basically function in the same way. It's going to take all of the widgets that you place inside of children and it's going to orient it, up and down in order or left to right. But there's a couple properties here that we can change. So the first one is main axis alignment, and the second one is cross axis alignment. So that might sound a little bit confusing at first, but basically all that means is how do you want to adjust the widgets? How do you want to space them in each direction? Okay, so what main axis means is the main direction that the row or column is going. So for example, if you have a row, main axis alignment is going to be from left to right. Okay, so you're going to be adjusting space from left to right. Cross axis alignment is going to be, anything, it's just going to be the opposite of the main axis. So if we have a row, the main axis would be horizontal and the cross axis would be vertical. For column, it's going to be the same thing, but the opposite, right? Because columns go up and down. The main axis alignment is also going to be up and down, while cross axis will be horizontally. All right, and yeah, so again, I'm going to show you guys these in actual coding, and it should make more sense. And by the way, as I'm going, I know I'm going a little bit fast. That's just because I want to, get through this so we can go to the actual coding part. But if you have any questions as we're going, go ahead and just put it in the chat. All right, so we just went over some things that are some widgets that are built into Flutter. So like buttons, rows, columns. But if you want to create your own widgets, you can do that as well. So yeah, you can create your own widgets. You just create a new file and then you can put stuff inside of it. Yeah, the main thing you just have to decide is whether it's going to be a stateless or a stateful widget. But generally, when we're creating new pages, which is what we're mainly going to be doing, you would just make it a stateful widget. And I know this looks like a lot of code that you have to type out when you're getting set up. But as I'll show you in a second, Android Studio is really good about this. And there's a shortcut that basically generates all of this code for you. You just have to fill in some basic stuff like the names and whatnot. So yeah, moving on, page navigation, right? So this is how you get back and forth between each page. Let's say you have an app like a shopping app, right? An online marketplace, right? When you click on an item, you want to be taken to the screen where maybe you can, either view more information about the item or go to somewhere where you can check out, right? And that's where page navigation comes in. One thing important to note is that, what you call pages or screens, they're really just different widgets that you're displaying. And that, kind of affects how you're going to be changing between pages. But the way you do it is basically you just type out navigator.push. You're giving it context, which is just saying, I'm on this page currently. And then you're saying new material page route. So giving it the path to go to this new screen, which in this case is called test. So for this, you mainly just have to kind of remember how to go through this. And then once you do it once or twice, you can either just copy paste it or just remember it, since the only thing that you have to change is this part, which is just setting what screen you want to go to. To return to the previous one, it's pretty simple. You just say navigator.pop context. I'll show you again in a second why that works. And yeah, so let's go ahead and jump into the actual code. So if you installed Flutter already, and I know it takes a while to do that, so you might not have it yet, you can go ahead and just open up Android Studio and go along with me. If not, what you can do is you can go to Dartpad. Here, let me just, if you type in Dartpad Flutter, and you just go on the first option, it should bring you up to a page where you can do the same thing. And then I'm going to send out this link with demo code. And basically, it'll be just what I'm looking at in Android Studio. But if you paste it into here, you can work on the same stuff as me. So let me go ahead and just paste it in the chat. Hopefully everyone can see that. I'll give you guys a second to get set up, whether you have Android Studio installed or you're using Dartpad. All right, so if you don't have Android Studio installed right now, that's fine. We're not going to go over like the process of installing it right now, but if you have any questions, you can let me know later. I'll just leave my contact information somewhere and you guys can probably email me or something like that. But if you do have it installed and you want to follow along and create a new project, the way we do that is we open up Android Studio. You should see something like this. And then go to start a new Flutter project. Click on that. We'll go next. And then we need to give it a name. So we'll just say, I'm going to call it demo app 12, I think. And then just make sure all of these other things are set. I'm just not going to go through that too much in detail right now. You can figure it out on your own in a bit. But yeah, just go with that. And it should be working. All right, and then once you pull that up, you should see some demo code here, and that's what we're going to go through in a second. If you're using Dartpad, go ahead and just go to the link I sent, and then we want to copy the first part of the code, like that, and then just paste it into here, so we should be looking at the same thing. All right, and let me know if you have any questions about that. Give me 1 second. So copy paste this first part of the code until it says second screen, just this part. And then go to Dartpad, just look up Dartpad Flutter. Flutter, and it should be the first option. All right, and then you should be able to run it. All right. So yeah, hopefully we should be looking at the same thing, whether it's Android Studio or Dartpad. I would recommend eventually getting Android Studio installed because with Dartpad, it's just a single screen, right? You can have multiple files. And with Android Studio, you'll be able to run an emulator. Basically, you can just, test stuff on a virtual device. But yeah, okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and just run this and you guys can do the same thing. And yeah, so I think what the plan is I'm gonna explain what's going on here with the demo code. And then we're just gonna do a little bit of, just messing around with it. And we're gonna create a simple app where you can, enter in like a passcode and it'll take you to a separate screen. So basically it's just gonna incorporate all of the stuff that we did earlier. And if you're not following along, that's fine. I'll send out the stuff later on and you can kind of just work through it on your own and just let me know if you have any questions. All right, so if you are running it, by the way, so I can run it here as well. It takes a little bit of time. Where do you paste it? You can just delete what is currently there and then just paste it in. Actually, I didn't copy everything. Just go to here. And then if you hit run, it should look something like this. If you have it on Android Studio, it should be the same thing, but on a phone. I can move it like that a bit. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a look at the demo app and see what is going on. It's really simple, but it has a few of the elements that we just went over earlier. So the first thing is we know that this is using a scaffold at the top of the widget tree because we have an app bar up here. We can see it has a title. It has a floating action button here. Okay, and then inside of that, we see that we have two texts, right? Two text widgets, and they're right above each other, right? And that basically just means that we're using a column, right? And then inside of the column, we have two children widgets, which are the texts. All right. And then one more thing, when we click on this button, we can see that this number is going up. So we have a little simple function set up and, we can add a bit to it if we want to. And yeah, so let's go ahead and take a look at the code. And I'll just delete these comments just because they're taking up a bit of space. All right, so when you create a new Flutter project, it's gonna have this stuff by default. It'll say my app, or let's say void main run my app, and I'll have my app here. Okay, and this is basically just code that sets up the app whenever you run it, right? It's just saying do all this setup stuff for Flutter, and then we're gonna start on this page. Okay, that's what it's asking for. How do you get to that page? It depends on whether you're on Dartpad or Android Studio. But if you hit run on either, it should bring you up to something like this. All right, yeah, so where was I? So you don't really have to worry about this code too much. This is just default code that's starting the app. The main thing is this, which we'll talk about in a second. And this is just, you're saying what page do we want to start on? Okay, what widget do we want to display first? The demo app. Oh, if you create a new Flutter project, I just named mine demo app. Okay. Anyways, so we can see we're starting here. And this is a stateful widget. And yeah, so we can ignore most of this stuff at the top. Again, this is like default code that is already there. And it's basically just setting up the widget. The reason why we don't have to worry about it too much is we're not going to be typing this out by hand every time. It's really easy for Flutter to just automatically generate it for us, and we just change what we need to. Okay, the main thing we want to worry about is we're going to skip that stuff too for now. is the build method. The new project should be in Flutter. So if you went through the setup instructions and you had the plugin installed, it should give you the option to say new Flutter project. If it doesn't yet, I would just go back to the installation instructions afterwards and see if you can set that up. For now, if you want, you can just follow along with Dartpad, or you can just watch what I'm going through, and then you can do it on your own afterwards. Yeah, anyways, so what we're going to be looking at is the widget build method. Okay, this is probably the most important part because this is going to determine what you're displaying on the screen. Right. So earlier we went through all of these widgets. If we go through here, right, rows and columns, containers, buttons, scaffold, app bar, that kind of stuff. All of that is going to be placed within the build method, right? And that's where we're going to, just display everything that we're seeing. So if you take a look here, let's just see what we have and how it's building this. So the first thing we see is we have a scaffold widget. And like I said earlier, this is good to have at the top of every page widget that we're creating. Okay. You can see inside of the scaffold, we also have a app bar property. You can see that up here. We're creating an app bar and a new app bar. We're just giving it a title. Okay. The next thing, this part is important, is the body and then center. So earlier I talked about how widgets have child or children inside of them. For a scaffold, the property is called body, but it basically serves the same purpose, right? So we have our scaffold, and then we're putting widgets inside of it. In this case, it's just going to be a body. And then we can see that it's a center widget. So I didn't talk about this, but I think it's pretty self-explanatory. The center widget is basically just going to take whatever child it has inside of it, and it's just going to place it, well, in the center. Okay, so we have center, and it's going to take whatever we have and put it in the center. Okay, we can see that the child of the center is a column, and that just means we're going to be putting multiple widgets. In this case, text and this number. We're putting that inside it, and we can see that here. Right, we have text. You have to push this button this many times, and then we have text, and this is just displaying the counter or how many times you click the button. And then also one more thing to note is we have main axis alignment dot center. So again, for a column, the main axis is going to be up and down. So it's saying you're going to place it in the center vertically, right? And there's also some other options. Let me just show you them right now. So if we say main axis alignment dot space between, and then also I'll show you how quick hot reloading is. Let me just put this to the side. All right, so if I press Control S, which is basically the shortcut for hot reloading, we can see that just like that in like 1 or 2 seconds, it changed. And yeah, we can also see that space between is basically just spacing them out as far as possible. You can also say space evenly, and that's just going to make sure the space between each one is even. But we're not going to worry about that too much for now. You can mess around with that on your own. We're just going to stick with center. Okay, so that stuff is all just the text within the column. And then the last thing, right? So this is going to be the floating action button, right? And we can see, like we talked about earlier, it has two main things: the child, which can be a text icon or something along those lines, and an on press, right? So what is it going to do when you click on it? So we can see we have child icon. So we're saying, we're going to put something inside of the button, in this case, an add a plus button icon. And when we click on it, it's going to do some function. And here we just put in the function name, and it says increment counter. If we scroll up to here, you can see it's right here. And all it's really doing is taking this counter variable and it's increasing it by 1. Right? So every time I click it, we see that the counter variable is increasing by 1, and we're displaying it to the screen. Okay, one thing I do want to point out here that I didn't talk about in the presentation is something called set state. Okay, so let me just go ahead and comment it out, and let's see what happens. All right, so now I no longer have set state, And when I click on it, right, you can see I'm clicking on the button, but nothing is happening. Let me do something else as well. We're going to print out counter like that. And by the way, you don't have to follow along for this part. I'm just walking through the code. But yeah, so if we print out counter just to see, what's going on with the variable when we click on it. If I run it again, we can see that even though this number isn't changing, we can see that the variable is increasing by 1 every time we click on it, because when we print it, right, the number is going up. It keeps going up every time I click on it, but nothing is happening here. So that's why we need set state. But what exactly does set state do? So one way I like to think about set state is it's kind of like, refreshing the screen. So let's say you have your email inbox, right? And somebody sends you a new email. Okay, so it's there, it's in the cloud or the database or whatever, but you don't see it on your screen, right? You're gonna have to refresh it in order to get this new data and display it, even though it's already there. So that's kind of what's going on with set state. So even though we're changing this variable behind the scenes, we won't be able to see it unless we refresh whatever app screen we're on currently. So that's why we have set state there. So let me go ahead and just get it back to normal. And yeah, it's gonna keep increasing. Okay, so that was the basic app or the demo app that comes when you open up Flutter. Do you guys have any questions about that? If you're following along in Dartpad, it should be the same. All right, cool. So now we're gonna move on to, just actually doing some stuff in it. The first thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna create some more buttons using rows, and then you can, increase the clicker or the counter by different amounts. And then we're gonna create a simple like passcode app of sorts. All right, so the first thing we wanna do is we wanna add some more buttons. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add a row here, and it's gonna say +1, +2, and +3. And each one is just gonna increment the counter by different amounts, okay? So if you're following along, what we're going to do is we're gonna put this underneath the text that's already there. So what we want to do is we wanna go inside of the column. So we see column, and then inside of the children, I'm gonna just create a new row. Okay. The row properties are, main axis alignment, cross axis alignment, and children. For now, we're going to do the children first, and then we'll worry about spacing. So we're going to say row, children. And what do we want to put inside of it? We just want a few buttons, right? Let's go with 3. And even though there's a lot of different buttons, right? I'll just look up. Right, there's all kinds of different ones. Where are they? Here they are. We're just gonna go with a, let's go with a raised button. Kind of like those, I think they look good. They give you a bit of like a 3D effect when you click on them. So let me go back, and we're just gonna say raised button. And by the way, just real quick, when you're creating new widgets, you're basically just saying the widget name, and then you're putting the properties inside of it. But something to note, generally the naming convention with Flutter is when you're creating the new widget, the widget name is going to be, you're going to capitalize every first letter of the word. So in this case, raised button. But when you're dealing with properties, it's going to be, I think, camel case. So basically, it's going to be lowercase. And then if you have a second word, we'll capitalize it. So for example, on press, lowercase o and capital P. And that's just something to note. I think with Android Studio, it has really good, autocomplete. So if you type something in, even if it's not completely correct, it'll recommend the correct kind. Dartpad, I don't think it does it as well, if at all. So that's just something to watch out for. But anyways, back to what we were doing. We're just creating new buttons. And for now, let's just say child. We want it to be a text. So the main property is, the text itself. So we're just going to do quotation marks +1 for the first one. Okay, and on press. So let's go ahead for now, before we change it and make it, increment by different amounts. Let's make it do the same thing as the floating action button. Okay, so we're going to say child text +1. We're going to say on press, right? And we're just going to call whatever method we want. So increment counter. Let's go with that. Increment counter. Okay. One thing to note, and we're going to be changing this later on, but since this is a void method and it's not taking, it's not taking in any parameters, we don't have to give it any numbers. We can just directly call the function name, right? We can just say increment counter. But later on, when we're passing in parameters, like we're saying, we want to add 1, we want to add 3, right? Then we're going to need to change the syntax a little bit. But for now, we're just going to go with that. So yeah, that's all we need to create a button. And I'm just going to copy paste this 2 more times. If you're following along, you can do the same thing. And if you change that and just hot reload, it should look something like this. So I know it's off center, and we're going to fix that in a second. But that's kind of where we're at right now. So go ahead. If you want, you can just type out the row and just give it those buttons. And we can see that when we click on each one, it reacts, and each one is incrementing it by 1, just like this one. And again, if you have any questions so far, you can go ahead and just leave it in the chat. All right. And if you didn't catch anything, I'm going to be sending out a link to a GitHub project with all the code on it. So, you can work it out on your own, and then you can just check with it, see if what you're doing is correct. All right. So hopefully you should be at this point where these are all incrementing. Right now, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to make it look a little bit better. And we're going to do that by doing main axis alignment. So we just don't want it to be, right next to the left side. Main axis alignment dot. Let's try a couple of different ones. So we can say main axis alignment dot center. It's just going to look like that. But maybe we don't want them right next to each other. So what we can do is main axis alignment dot space. I think we can try space evenly. All right, I kind of like the way that looks. If you want them really far apart, you can just say space between. That works as well. But I kind of like what it was earlier. How do you change the colors? One thing you can do is, I'm not sure if they have a color property. Oh, they do have a color property. You can say color, and we'll say colors.blue. That changes the color. And by the way, Flutter has, if you're doing colors, Flutter has a lot that are built in. So you can say color, and then you can say capital C, colors dot, and then it'll give you all of these options. Right? You can just go with any of these. If you want to use your own, you can deal with like hexadecimal numbers, hexadecimal values, and you can type that in, say color XFF, and then type in the hexadecimal code. For now, we're not going to deal with that. Let's see how it is. But if you want to do a color, there's a color property. Yeah, so we have this spaced out. Now we're going to go ahead and change the function, right? So we want each one to, increment it by a different amount. So how can we do that? Let's go ahead and go up to our increment counter function. And yeah, so right now, all it's doing is it's incrementing, it's increasing it by 1 every single time we click on the button, right? Every time we call this function. But we don't want it to do that. We want it to do it by different amounts. So what we can do is we can say, we can have it taken a number. So we'll say within the parentheses, we'll say int num. And instead of saying underscore counter plus plus, we'll say underscore counter plus equals num, which by the way is basically just, you have this new number and we're adding it to whatever it is before, right? And that's really all we have to change. The only problem is now we have to change all the buttons so that when we're calling it, we have to pass in a parameter. Okay. So yeah, that's all we did to increment counter. Let's go back down to here. So we want this floating action button to still increase it by 1, right? So now we have to say increment counter and then just give it 1. The problem is Flutter doesn't like it when you just type it in like that. It's going to give you an error when you do that. So what we have to do is we're just going to get rid of that. And then we just say on press, colon, and then we're going to do parentheses and curly braces. Okay, and then inside of these curly braces, you can just type out whatever code you want. You can have multiple lines. In this case, we're just going to say increment counter 1 and end up with a semicolon. Okay. So again, the syntax for that to put multiple lines of code that happen when you click the button, when you do on press, is you just do parentheses and then curly braces. All right, so let's go ahead and I'm just gonna save time and copy this. You can do the same thing once you have it typed out, and I'll put it for all of these race buttons. And that should fix all of the errors. Now the only thing we have to change is the value that we're incrementing each one by. So +2 should be increment counter 2, +3 should be increment counter 3. And now if we hot reload it, we can see that this plus button is working fine. We click +1, does the same thing. +2, it's going to increase by 2 each time we click on it. And +3 is going to increment by 3. So it looks like it's working. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and give you guys a second. All I just did was I changed this increment counter to take in a number rather than being void and not having any parameters. I changed counter instead of underscore counter plus plus to be underscore counter plus equals num. And then for all of these, I had to change it so that it says on press. It's going to be parentheses and curly braces. And inside of here, we're just going to be calling the increment counter method, just passing in whatever number we want to increment it by. So yeah, if we wanted to increment it by 5, we can just do that. I'll reload it. So I'll give you guys a second to do that. And then we're just going to do changing screens. And then also, if you're just, if you're looking at these and you want to try to find more properties, if you just look up, let's say Flutter column, go to here. You can see it gives you examples. If you scroll down more, it should give you all the properties that there are. And while it might be a little bit hard to read at first, you can just look through it and we see like main axis alignment, main axis size. It gives you all of these. What did you put in between the? Oh. So what I did was increment counter. I put int num, and basically that's just saying as a parameter we want to take in a number or an integer. And that's just changing the amount that we're incrementing by each time.
What is the background noise? Does somebody have to go on mute? Okay.
Oh, is there background noise? It might be
Yeah,
me then.
there was something. Now it's gone. Good. Yeah. Thank you.
All right, so I'm gonna just move on now, just for the sake of time. Again, I'm gonna be posting all of these, so you can take a look at them later. All right, so right now what we have is, we have these 3 buttons, increased by that. But now let's say we wanna create a new screen. Okay, we're gonna go to a new page. So the way we do that is we need to create a new widget. And so if you're following along in Android Studio, we're going to create a new file. If you are in Dartpad, we're just going to put it at the bottom. And that's just because with Dartpad, since it's just within the browser, it's not going to let you create multiple files. Okay. So if you are using Android Studio, which hopefully everyone will be eventually, what we're going to do is we're going to go in the project files, and we're going to go under lib. And lib is basically just lib is basically where all of your files are going to be, or all of your screen files are going to be. So what we're going to do is we're just going to right click, go to new, and we're going to say Dart file, because that's that's the language we're coding in. We're just going to say Dart file, give it in. So I'll talk a bit more about like naming conventions tomorrow. For now, I'm just going to call it screen_2. Actually, I will say second, and you can name it whatever you want. All right, so this is going to give you a blank screen with nothing on it, but we want to have all of that, kind of code we need to create a new widget. Okay, so obviously you could type it out by hand. We can say like class second screen extends widget, whatever. Right? But the easiest way to do it in Android Studio is you can just say STF, and it's going to give you the shortcut. If you hit enter, it'll bring up all of this code, so that now all I have to do is type in second screen, just like that, and it should be working. If you are following along in Dartpad, I have this code typed out here where it says second screen setup code, and actually we don't need that line. You can just copy this and then just paste it at the bottom of Dartpad down here. Again, if you're in Android Studio, the shortcut is STF, and then just hit enter. If you're creating a stateless widget, which we're not doing right now, but you might later on, it's just STL, enter, and it brings up all of this. Okay, one thing to note is when you do that, you don't want to click off of it immediately. You just want to type in the screen first, or the screen name. And that's because, whatever I type in now, it's going to be adding it to multiple places. So we're just going to say class second screen, just like that. And yeah. So again, it's STF. Dartpad, I don't think it has a shortcut. It didn't when I tried earlier. So I just went ahead and pasted this code in the Google Drive or the Google Doc for you guys. And you can just paste it in at the very bottom. All right, one thing to note in Android Studio is when you first create this new widget in a new file, it's going to give you a few errors. And the main reason for that is we haven't imported Flutter or imported material, right, like we did here. There's a simple solution to do that. And, obviously we can type it out at the top, or there's a really nice shortcut. And this is used for multiple things in Android Studio or Flutter. But if you hit Alt Enter, we can see it brings up a bunch of options to fix the error. Again, that's Alt plus Enter. I can't remember what the shortcut is if you're on a Mac, but it should be either Command or Option plus Enter. You'll have to mess around with that. But yeah, and then we're going to say import library package Flutter/material, and that should fix everything. With Dartpad, there shouldn't be an issue with that since we're all on the same screen. But yeah, so once we've done that, all we're gonna do is we just want something to indicate that we're on the new screen. So we're just gonna replace this container. We're gonna say scaffold. Again, we're using a scaffold because we're creating a page widget rather than just a single button. Scaffold and then body. Remember, body is the equivalent of saying child. It's just scaffold is body instead. We say body, let's give the center. We want to put text at the center. Then we're going to give the center a child. We say text. This can be whatever you want because it's obviously going to look different. But we're just going to say second. Okay, so I'll give you guys a second to create the second screen, whether it's in a new file or just at the bottom of the start pad. I'll leave the code up here. And then after that, I'll show you how to get to this new screen. All right, so hopefully we have that. It shouldn't take too long. I'm gonna go back to the main file. So what we're going to do now is we already have 3 buttons, but we're gonna add one underneath it. And that's just gonna say, take me to a second screen. So yeah, I'm gonna go inside of the column and we're just gonna go underneath the first text, underneath the second one, underneath the row, which ends right here. By the way, one more thing to point out, if you're using Android Studio, and I think, no, Dartpad doesn't do it. But when you end a widget, right at the end of each one, whether it's a closing parentheses or the hard bracket, it's gonna automatically create a comment and you can't delete it. But it's really helpful. It just shows you where each widget ends. So if you're scrolling down, you can see row ends here. So if you want to add a new widget, we can go right underneath it. But yeah, so we're just going to create a new button. Let's do a flat button this time, just so we can see the difference. So we're going to say a flat button. But even though it's a flat button this time, the way we create it is the same. It's going to give it a child text. This time, we're going to do quotation marks and say, go to next. Just like that. And then on press. All right, this is the part where I went over earlier. And really you just have to remember it, or you can look it up. And you only need to do it once because it's always going to be the same except for one part. Okay, so we're just going to say on press. And since it's taking in a parameter, we have to do it this way. We can't just give it the name. Or there's a shortcut. If we only have one thing that we're doing, we can do something called a fat arrow, which is basically just saying parentheses, equal sign, and then greater than sign. So it looks like an arrow just like that. And we can type it out here. Okay, so if that's a bit too confusing, you can just do it this way. But this is, oh, I messed up my code. Just to save a bit of space, I'm going to do it this way. So we're going to say parentheses and then this little arrow. I'm going to say navigator push. Okay, and first thing you're going to give it is you're just going to say context. It should do it by default. And then we're going to say comma new material page route. And again, Android Studio has good autocomplete, so it makes it a lot easier to do this. I'm just going to say builder. We're going to make it empty. So we're going to say parentheses underscore parentheses, do another arrow. And this is going to be pointing to what page you want to go to. So in this case, we called it second screen. So we're just going to type that in. right? I know it might be a lot to copy down, so I'm just going to go ahead and paste this part in the chat if anyone needs it. And again, if we had another screen and we called it, like, for example, third screen, one thing we would change is we would just call it third screen. Okay, obviously I'm getting an error here because it doesn't exist. But yeah, that's how you would do it to another screen. So I'll give you guys a second to add that. All we really did was, after creating the second screen, we just added a new button. And then now when I run it, see it appears here. And you can see with the flat button, when I click on it, it shows up. But this one, flat button, right? It's just flat against the screen basically. And you can't really see it like the other ones. But anyways, if I click on it now, we can see it takes me to the second screen. I can go back, go to the next screen, just like that. So yeah, one thing to note is that on Dartpad, you don't have like these back buttons like you have on an Android phone. So to go back to the previous screen, one thing you can do is, let's see, instead of just saying text, we can make a column and then put a button underneath it. So let me actually do that right now. All right, so let me show you another shortcut, and I actually mentioned this earlier. But if you use Alt-Enter, all right, so this is used for solving errors or fixing issues. But you can also use it for wrapping widgets. Right? So what that means is we already have a text, but we want to surround it with something else. Right? So in this case, we want to surround it with a column. If we hit Alt-Enter, we can say wrap with column. Okay, and it just does that. So, it might not save too much time when you're dealing with singular widgets, but when you have a lot of code, this saves a lot of time where you don't have to, cut it, paste it, deal with all of these parentheses and whatnot. I think in Dartpad, you can actually do the same thing. So if I, for example, center, hit Alt-Enter, yeah, it brings up the same options. All right, cool. So what was I going to do? Oh, yeah. So underneath the text, let's just add a raise button. We wanted to say child. Go back to, I just say go back. And then on press. And in this case, we're going to say navigator.pop. Context. I forgot to do. Okay, so let me just really quickly explain what navigator.pop context means and how it works. Let me go ahead and explain it. All right, so I mentioned earlier that all screens are basically widgets, right? And the way navigator.push works is, it switches to a new screen. But it's not really switching. It's more like placing a widget on top of the other one. So you can even see it through the animation. If I say go to the next screen, we can see there's like a slight animation where there's a new screen that kind of pulls up, right? So yeah, so it's a new widget that pulls up. And basically what that means is if I say navigator.pop, we're basically just getting rid of whatever screen is on top. So if I go back, oh, went back a bit too far. Shoot, okay, I have to run it again. Whoops. But basically, it's placing a widget on top of it. When we say navigator.pop, it's just getting rid of that. Okay, let me see if I can run it again. There we go, cool. Go back. And let me go ahead and place this in the center. And again, I can do this by saying main axis alignment center. All right, cool. So yeah, I'm going to give you guys a second to kind of just get caught up to that. And then we're going to move on to the last thing, which is basically just creating a simple, like a passcode app. So you probably won't be actually using that in like a practical app, but it's kind of just to wrap up and bring all the stuff that we learned today together. Sorry, and then later on we'll be working on apps that look a bit more like professional, right? And Flutter is, I think, really good at that. Like you can easily make really professional looking apps. And yeah, here's the code for the second screen. All right. So yeah, if you want to just keep what we have so far, I think what you can do is say new pad. Let's see. I wonder if there's a way to save it. Okay. If you want, you can just paste this onto a separate document just to save what we have right now. But what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to change this up a little bit. Right. So what I'm going to do is we're going to create the passcode thing. So the first thing we want to do is we want to have the ability to have a grid of 9 numbers plus 1 for 0. Okay. And the nice thing is we already have most of it here, right? We already have the buttons. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of this flat button. And I'm going to take this row, right? Each row has 3 buttons. And if I just go underneath and paste it 2 times, right? Now we have a grid of 9 buttons. I'm just going to change the text a little bit. So it's just saying the number 1, 2, 3, 4. So this is just kind of like a keypad. Yeah, it looks something like that. I'm just going to add one more to have the 0 button. Zero. Okay. And I don't think this is exactly how like a keypad looks. It might be in the other order. But we're just going to go with this for now. If you want, you can change it up. But yeah. So right now what's going on is these numbers are still doing increment counter, right? It's doing whatever we had set up earlier. So now we need to create something new, right? So how is this going to work? The way this is going to work is we're going to have 2 variables, one for the actual password and one that's storing, whatever the user types in. Okay, and then every time it's just going to check to see if, first of all, is what the user typed in the same length as the password? And then secondly, is the password the same as what the user typed in? Okay, if it is the same, we're going to go to the next screen. Otherwise, we're just going to clear the user input. Okay, so let's go ahead and set that up right now. So the first thing we want to do is we're going to create 2 variables. We're going to make them strings for now, and that's just because it'll be a little bit easier to deal with. So we're going to say string password equals. Okay, and then for this, this can be, whatever you want. I'm going to set it to be 1, 2, 3, 4 for now, just so it's easy. But that'll be where you're changing it if you want to change the password. We'll say string input equals, and this is going to be an empty string, right? And this is because we want to start off with nothing, but then as the user types in things, it'll appear. All right, cool. So now that we have that, what's next? Let's go ahead and create the method that is going to update the input and check the password. So let's first set up updating the input and displaying what the user types in. So we're just going to say void underscore update input. And again, we want to take in a parameter. In this case, it's going to be string num. Okay. And we're basically going to do what we did earlier with increment counter. But in this case, we're going to say set state. We're going to do input plus equals num. Okay. One thing to note about this is since both input and num are strings, it's not going to add the numbers up. Instead, it's going to do something called concatenation, which is basically just placing one at the end of the other. Right. So if input is currently an empty string, it's just going to add num to the end of it. Right. When the user types in another number, let's say 2, it's going to add 2 to the end of it, and so on and so forth. So yeah, so we have the basic, updating the input setup. Let's go ahead and just see if this works. So instead of displaying counter, we want to say input. Okay, and here instead of saying increment counter, we want to do update input, and we're gonna pass in strings for each one. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to copy paste this a few times. So I'm just going to change it so that it matches the number. Nothing too fancy. It's just going to take a little bit to go through each one. Oops. And last one, actually 2 more. Oops. 9 and then 0. Run it again. Okay, so now that number is gone, but as I press each one, you can see it's appearing. Cool. All right. So now we can see that we're running into an issue. And the issue is there's no limit to how many numbers we can do, right? We want it to be only as long as the password is. Right? So that means that if the password is longer, it can take in more numbers, but we don't want it to go over the password. So what can we do? We're just going to go to update input, and we just want to check, right? We're going to say, is the input equal to the same length as the password? So the way we can do that is we can say if input dot length equals password dot length. So this is just saying, just checking how many characters are in each string. If they're equal, actually let's do greater than or equal to, just in case, if for some reason you end up with more, we want to reset the input. So we're saying input equals empty string. Okay, and we're going to add more to this later to check to see if they're the same. But for now, we're just going to reset it. So if I run this again, okay, hold on. There we go. So I type in 4 numbers, it'll automatically reset. And we don't see the last one just because it resets immediately, but it's fine for now. And then I'm just going to go ahead and finish this. And then if you want to follow along with the code, you can do that afterwards. Since we're running a little bit low on time, but basically what we're going to do next is we're seeing a check. So before we clear the input, we want to say if input equals password. Okay, so this is just saying, is the input equal to the password? Are they the same? If they are, what we're going to do is we're just going to copy the code from, where is it? Oh, we deleted it. Okay, we just want to do navigator.push to a new string. So we're going to say navigator.push new material page route context. Oh, sorry. Builder. Okay, Again, I think I typed it in the chat earlier. You can just use that. Okay, so now if I run it, put in some numbers, it's incorrect, and it just deletes itself. But if I type in 1, 2, 3, 4, it brings me to the new screen. And yeah, that's basically all there is to it. That's all we're going to be covering today. One other thing you can do is if you want to be able to see the text, we can go here. We can wrap it with a container. And what we're going to do is we're going to give it a width, so 50.0, height of, let's say 25.0. We'll give it a color just so you can see it. Color is blue. Now we can see that there's a box. And as we type in the numbers, actually this box is a bit too small. Make it like 100 wide by 50 tall. Nice. Okay, and then we can also center the text so it looks a bit better, like that. And yeah, that's basically all there is. I'll be sending out a document. It should have access to the sample code and also kind of the instructions for doing this. If you want, you can play around with it some more. You can have an option to clear immediately. You can add an option to do like backspace. Let's see what else you can do. You can do, if you want, you can have letters or symbols. There's just some more stuff you can mess around with. If you really want to, you can try creating something like a calculator. So using the screen, but you can say like 4 plus 5 equals 9, etc., etc. But yeah, let me know if you guys have any questions about that. Also, here's my contact information. If you just want to, if you have issues with installing Flutter, or you just have some other questions, you just let me know any of these. I think I prefer email or Discord, but can I explain? Okay. Which part do you want me to go over again? I go over what each command means. Okay. So the thing that we did for here was we did update input. And what we're basically doing is each time you click on one of these buttons, it's going to take in a number, right? So if you look here in the parameters, we're taking in a number. The reason why we're saying string number is just because that makes it easier to display. And we're not adding the numbers together. We're just putting it on the end, okay? And then inside of here, remember we're calling set state because we want to basically update the screen, and we're changing the data, but we need to update the screen so we can see it, right? That's what set state means. All right, inside of here, we're saying input plus equals num. And what that means is we're going to take the number and we're going to add it to the end of the string. So for example, if we have 2 already, we click on any of these buttons, let's say 5, it's going to put it on the end of the string. 9, same thing. And yeah. Okay, so you can see the numbers disappeared. And that's because we're checking something. We're checking to see if whatever the user types in is the same length as the password that we set. Right, so we set this password to be 1234. That means the length is going to be 4. So once we type in 4 numbers, it's going to check to see if, it's going to check to see if the length is the same. Then if the lengths are the same and the input and the password are the same, and that means you typed in something that was, the same numbers as the password, we're going to say navigator.push, which just means we're going to the next screen. Okay. And then after that, we're saying input equals empty quotation marks. an empty string. And that basically just means we're going to reset the input. So once we do the 4 characters, whether it's right or wrong, we're going to say input is equal to empty string and reset it. Does that kind of explain it? Is there anything else you want me to go over? Okay, just let me know if you have any other questions. But I think that's all from me. I'll just leave this here for a second. Can you run the app again? What do you mean by running it? So just like going through it. So if I type in 4 numbers, it's not working. I type in 1, 2, 3, 4, brings me to this screen. All right, and then once I hit go back, all right, does navigator.pop, which is basically just removing whatever widget is on top. Yeah, no problem. And again, I'll send out this code. If you want to, you can download it or just paste it into your Dartpad or whatever. You can run it again just to see how it works. But yeah. I think I'll just get rid of this text. We don't need it.
Hey, Lucas, are you done with the session?
Yeah, I think we finished a bit earlier, but
Okay.
I'm just, if anyone has any questions, I can answer them. But otherwise, I'm done.
Yeah, that's okay. Thank you. So yeah, so 12:30 we will begin the session. 12:30, which is 3:30. Another 3 minutes. We will begin the session with a presentation of the actual hackathon, and how to go about during the hackathon, and what to present. So yeah, give it 3 more minutes.
Thank you, Lucas. Thank you for the awesome presentation and the awesome session. And yeah, participants, Lucas is an expert in Flutter. So, if you have any questions, as he mentioned, send him an email and he should be able to answer your questions. And Lucas is also available as a technical mentor on the day of the hackathon. So, on Discord as well, they can send you messages, right, Lucas?
Yeah, for sure. I'll be available to help throughout the hackathon, and throughout the next week, I'll give you guys some assignments to work on. Since obviously we can't cover everything in 2 sessions, if you just want to work on some stuff, I'll be free to help out with that. But yeah.
And also on the day of the hackathon, if you're working on a page, if you're stuck somewhere, you just have to say @Lucas on your Discord, and Lucas should be able to come to your channel and help you out. And you're going to also have more technical mentors. We're going to probably have about 5 or 6 technical mentors for Lata. Is it for Flutter? Do we have 4 technical mentors or?
Yeah,
or,
I think we have, definitely we have 3. The 4th one is yet to confirm.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
That
yeah,
should
so,
be enough. That should be enough. Yeah.
yeah. So we'll have, so they should be able to come to your channels and, help you out if you're stuck anywhere, or if you need some guidance on how to have a particular, button or particular feature on the app, so they will be there to help you on the day of the hackathon as well. And I think the more you play around with, with all what Lucas has gone over with you, and he'll also be sending you some exercises to work on. I think the key is hands-on, and that's one of the main goals of the hackathon as well, is for you to have that hands-on experience to create an app or a website. So, even if you're able to create a page or a couple of pages, that would be really great. Yeah.
Hello.
Hi, Ansh.
Hey. So should I get started or?
Give it a couple of minutes. I think I see people joining now because, the people are joining just for the 3:30 session. Let's give it about 2 or 3 minutes for them to join. And then,
Hi, everybody. If anyone new joined just for the HTML call, please fill in an attendance form, which is the same as the workshop form you had filled in earlier. So we would like to know, who all attending the session. And if you were part of the Flutter and you did not fill out, I can see 50 people registered, which probably 10 more did not register yet. So if you're still here, do register in the Google form that you will see in the chat right now. And anybody joining new, please fill in the form so we know who all have attended today. Yes, if you have filled it out already in the morning, no, just one for today. Once for today is fine.
you want to post the link, Lata?
Yeah, I'm typing it in Una.
Yeah. All right. And we can get started. I think we're at 65 participants.
You disabled participant screen sharing, so if somebody could give me access for that, that would be great.
Yeah, you should be good now, Ansh.
Yep, I can see it. Okay. Sorry. Okay, cool. Great. So are we in? Can everybody see my screen? Okay, great. So let's get started, guys. Hey, my name is Ansh. I'm one of the organizers for Star Hacks. And today I'll be doing a hackathon walkthrough. So this is really like more kind of tips and tricks and like, how to like kind of conduct yourself in hackathons and how to like really make it successful.
Can you hold on for 1 second?
Yeah.
The recording says paused. I'm just wondering. Padma, are you there? Or
I think Sailesh is the host now.
okay, I can resume. Go. Can you start again, Ansh?
Yeah, I can.
Yeah, please go ahead. Yeah.
Hey guys, my name is Ansh Gupta. I am an organizer for today's Star Hacks and a longtime hackathon attender. And today I'll be doing a hackathon walkthrough as to like, how to really conduct yourself in a hackathon, some tips and tricks to really make a successful submission in Star Hacks. So let's get started. Okay, so I hope that we've had some accomplishments so far with your team members and mentors. So, I hope that you've all met with your assigned teammates and team mentors, and also started to really like talk to each other and, understand, where everybody's kind of strength lies and really get to know each other. That's very important in a hackathon and collaboration, especially. And the second part that I hope you guys have become comfortable with is really deciding on one of the 4 categories that we've given to you guys and coming up with a cool idea to kind of address that problem, right? So definitely something to keep in mind. So in the last week, I hope that you've accomplished both these things so we can move forward regarding there. Okay, cool. So let's get into the first really big tip is that, in a hackathon, one must really have a prototype mindset. And what does that mean? In a hackathon, it is a time challenge, right? So you do have a time limit. So everything doesn't have to work perfectly, right? It's really an example of what your full product might look like in the future, right? So this is a proof of concept that really shows that your idea is like cool and viable, right? Rather than like, every little part of it functioning and like, having it deployed and whatever. It's really just to show, that your idea is cool, right? Through technology. And so what does this really mean? Like when you kind of get into the nitty-gritty details of things, this basically means start to focus on more on the design aspect, right? How does it look, right? How does the end user feel when kind of worrying about it? Because, in the end of the day, when somebody looks at your project, they're really looking at the front end side. They're really looking at, what is the website or app that you've made. So focus more on that aspect. And, another example is that, you could have buttons for design and like, to show that, these buttons might do something in the future. But like, for example, on a website, I might not have the time to go ahead and make every single button functional. And that's okay. We completely understand because we do all remember that you only have 7 hours to make these projects. So, we're really looking for that proof of concept to show that this is something that can definitely be taken forward in the future and made into a full product. So that's kind of what we're looking for in your project. So don't stress too much about, if you have too complex of an idea. It's just about kind of showing us a demonstration of what you can do.
Yeah.
Okay.
And one of the, sorry to interrupt, Ansh, one of the other key things also is for you to learn a little bit, at least, of the coding, right? I know some of you may be advanced hackers or some of you may have little coding experience. Some of you may have not done any coding, right? We want you to have a little bit of that hands-on experience, right? So, you've had the Flutter workshop and then the HTML workshop. And so, everybody in the team, make sure you at least code a little bit, right? You can make mistakes. You can, the mentors are there to help and guide you. But, if you have one piece on either the website or the app, which you have coded, that's basically, that would be a great takeaway. That would give you an idea of, a hands-on experience, as well as it would help you gauge if you're interested in something like that, right? So, yeah, thank you, Ansh. Move on. Yeah.
Yeah, no problem. So, that's definitely a mindset that you should have. But let's start to kind of explore on like, we've all come up with great ideas that could really help solve this problem. But, now we have to start to look at the next problem. How do you take that idea into a proper design? Right. And so one of the main things that I like to focus in my hackathons is really start by making a must-have chart, right? So kind of focusing on the must-have. So what do I really need to implement to show that my idea is cool, right? Because once again, there is a time issue. So, you need to focus on the must-haves. So, they have to be essential to the proof of concept, right? So if I haven't, if I have a project about masks or something, my first priority might not be like login and sign up. My first priority might be, to implement the feature where people can donate masks to each other, for example, right? So that might be my first priority. So definitely focusing on those priorities is a big thing. And the second thing is that once again, because of the time issue, you only really need to have 2 to 3 main features, right? Going beyond that is absolutely great, but it is great even if you only have 2 or 3. And really start thinking about how they're going to appear on the prototype. So once you've kind of decided that like, oh, I need to do X and Y, but like then it's like, when I'm going to develop my hackathon website or my app, where do I actually put those prototypes, right? Where do I actually put those features, right? Where would they appear on the screen? So those things are important questions that you can start asking yourself once you've kind of gone ahead and decided on the must-haves. And you can start to see like why this is super important to do before the day of the hackathon, and to kind of in your head start to visualize how would my final product even look like, right? And so once you kind of have that vision in your head, and you're able, and everybody in your team has that vision, that vision of the design, then we can start to really make great strides in our project. Okay, great. So the next step, before we even start hacking, we need to start splitting up the work, right? And this is why I mentioned that it's so important to get to know your teammates, because you need to start understanding like, what are the strengths of each teammate, right? You need to see which specific features that you want to implement, or which specific aspects of the project would they really, really help out in, right? And so based on those strengths, that's where you kind of have to split up the work accordingly, right? And those strengths might be very minor things as well, right? So it's like, oh, I'm really good with art, right? I'm really good with that aspect. Maybe they can start by deciding the color scheme. How would the for example, my website wants to be red and black. Those are my 2 main colors. So things like that, really splitting up the work accordingly is an important thing. Number 2, we really need to worry about time management. Once again, I'm saying this because it's crazy how like difficult things get at the last hour. I've been through this multiple times. So definitely, kind of making sure that you're having a somewhat of a timeline. So, before I start my project, like I don't have like such a detailed timeline, but it's obviously very, very important to have a rough timeline, right? I think that like, halfway through the hackathon, I really want to be at least at this spot, right? Because that's the only way that I'm even going to finish the project, right? So, this is an example timeline that I've kind of given you to get you kicked off, right? So for example, hour 1, by hour 1, you should have the entire project set up, having your HTML files created, everybody's on it, they can really start working and start to create the design, right? And then I'd say, oh, by hour 3, I want to have all that color stuff done. I want to have the landing page and the nav bar done, right? And then like, all of those details, so I can start really working on the features, right? And then by hour 6, maybe I'd say I want to be done with all the core features, the true implementations. And then finally, from hour 6 to hour 7, I really kind of want to work on my presentation with my teammates, developing those presentation decks and scripts, so that when you get to the live submission, you can just go ahead and kind of present your project. So I hope that made sense as a timeline. So definitely something to keep in mind, and at least have a rough idea, and discuss with your teammates actually that like, hey, we have all these features, but like, where does this kind of play out in the time sort of dimension, right? Okay, so kind of let's go ahead and jump into the, okay, actually, before this, I really kind of want to go ahead and show you what are some of the, like, what do some of the features kind of represent on a website. So sorry, what I basically mean by this is down here, right? What do I need to put in my landing page, or where does each feature go? We need to kind of discuss like, how does that really play out? So I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you guys an example project, an example website, of that really has these like 2 to 3 main important features that they've implemented. This is a little bit of a higher level project, but you can definitely go ahead and kind of see what do I mean by features, right? The main important features. So for example, this was one of the main important features that we wanted. We wanted a live map where people can hover, right? So this was one of the main features of our thing. And we decided, okay, we want to put this right on the landing page so that people can jump right into it, right? So that was our decision.
What is this
Okay.
project about, Ansh? What is the
Yeah, for
core
sure.
idea of this project? Yeah.
Yeah, let me go ahead and kind of explain that as well. But basically, this project is really about like, kind of understanding where disasters are in the world, right? Really visualizing where things are kind of going wrong and overcoming like those news cycles where like people just kind of discuss a disaster for like 3 days, like the explosion in Beirut. But like, even if the problem goes larger, like they just completely forget about the disaster and move on to the next piece of news, right? So really kind of keeping those disasters alive so that, we can go ahead and continue to help out them. And then similarly, this is also the second main feature that we really wanted to implement. Thank you for the segue, Una and T. But the second main feature that we wanted to really implement was providing help to others based on the disasters, right? So for example, in California, we've had wildfires. So for example, these are some of the requests that people might make, the victim of the disaster. And so you can see that this was our second main feature. And we thought, okay, the way that we want to really put this feature in is that if they click on the disaster, then it should go into this page, right? So you can see how, we had that train of thought that, okay, I want to have a map and I want to have, and I want to let people submit whatever's gone wrong in their lives. Okay, how do I connect these two together, right? And so you can see how that kind of plays out in coding, right? How it plays out in the actual design aspect of things.
So I think you took the idea, and your key thing in this was how to have a feature where people can reach out for help, where you're keeping those. You have you're showing what are all the disasters and which parts of the world they are in, and so you wanted to show which part of the world they are in, so people can connect with things that are closer to them, right? People live in different parts of the world, and the other thing is for the people who need help to reach out for help. So those are the two key features you wanted to bring out as a solution, right? So just focusing on two on the website. Yeah, there's so many things that can be, so many other features that can be added, but you wanted to focus on these two features, which was connecting the people who needed help with the people who are willing to offer the help. So.
Yeah, definitely. And those were, the two main features that we wanted to implement. And then, we realized we had some extra time on our hands. That was like the, the main one. But then we went ahead and even added in a search feature where like, if people, they're like, oh, I can help out some tutoring people today. Then like, based on whatever you kind of put in the search bar, it actually goes ahead and finds places where you can help. So, that was a little bit of an extra thing, definitely something cool, right? So these like little quality of life sort of features can definitely help. But like, remember, most of the hackathon just went into creating these two features, right? Because we had a time limit. So yeah, definitely kind of making sure that we're doing those things.
And you had a differentiating factor as against other options that are available, right? Like GoFundMe or anything, you just can give money. But here you can give other kinds of help, right? That's why you're focusing on the map. You can, like, people can say, okay, I can tutor, or I can, provide food, or, some other help other than they can provide time, they can donate their time, not just money, right? Like by offering skill-based volunteering and things.
Definitely. Yeah. That's a big aspect of it. Yeah. Thank you for explaining my idea. No, that was absolutely amazing. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you so much.
So that would be the wow, as Ansh said, it's important. Yeah, it's important to have at least two must-have features, and then at least one wow factor, right? Like when we go down the presentation later, you'll see the judging rubrics where you do get points for wow factor. So it would be good to have that one factor that differentiates your idea, your project from rest of what exists already, right? And also for innovation, there's also points for innovation, right? So you want to keep those two in mind. All right, Ansh.
Yeah, no, thank you so much. Yeah, you're definitely right. And I think kind of elaborating a little bit more on her stance. I've actually been on the judging side as well. So definitely the way that your audience really remembers you is through those wow factors, right? So definitely see like, how does my project kind of want to be remembered, right? What do you want the judges to remember you as? And so that's kind of definitely an important aspect of it. Thank you so much. Okay, so kind of moving on to the next slide, which is really jumping into the presentation, right? So I'm going to go ahead and kind of show you a presentation template that kind of highlights how one might go ahead and actually make their slide deck, right? So let me go ahead and jump into here. Okay, so we are requiring a few of these slides in our what do you call it, in your presentation, right? So I'm going to go ahead and show you this. I'm also going to share this with you after this presentation on the Discord, on the dashboard, things like that. This is very important that like you go ahead and actually when the day comes, you just go ahead and click file and you click make a copy. Entire presentation, and you make a copy of yourself, and then you can go ahead and edit these slides however you want. So you can change the themes and things like that, right? So definitely that's something that you have to do on your own, but this is kind of a template that we're going to go ahead and provide for you. Make sure that you're not deleting any of these slides, like especially like these main ones that I'm going to get to later. Don't delete them, okay? Because we are requiring that they be in your presentation. Okay, cool. So let's go ahead and start. So the first slide was really about like, we want to get to know who you are, right? The judges don't know who you are, but we really want to get to know you. So go ahead and put your name, maybe a profile picture, and then, what was your role, right? So, like example, project manager, right? So definitely have that information on the slide. The next is your problem statement, right? So this is once again kind of going into like, kind of expressing, why is the problem so important? And I'm going to get to this later on, but like, why is the problem so important? So, okay, yeah, definitely. So once you're done with the problem, you want to go ahead and present your solution, the knight in shining armor, right? That's really going to kind of remove this problem from the world. So you can go ahead and see, right? So maybe your idea name, a sentence or two, and then a logo definitely is very fun to create. Just search up online logo maker and you can go ahead and create a fun logo for your idea.
So those are things that make your project remembered, right? Be remembered, a unique logo, or
Yeah, logos are very important. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so the next thing is really like worrying about the solution slides, right? So basically, kind of so one of the main things about slides, I think I have to really express this, less text, more images, right? So we want to show diagrams, and I'm going to show you this later on in an example as well, but really kind of elaborating on those texts and images. Sorry, emphasizing really a lot on the images and like kind of developing diagrams to like show how your solution works, right? And I'm gonna show examples later on, but definitely something to make sure. Okay, so after explaining like what your solution is, maybe a little bit of how your solution works, getting into a little bit of the wow factors, like this is why we're really cool, or this is why this idea is really cool, right? So definitely kind of elaborating on that is very important. Okay, then just go ahead and jump into the demo. Exit the tab, go to your website and or app, and then just show how it looks like. Show what you've done in the 7 hours that you were given. Okay, cool. So we're also requiring, so these are like the standard hackathon slides, no matter what hackathon you go to, definitely these are very global, but these next 3 slides are like just to kind of give an impact of like, how like this is very hackathon specific for us, and we'd love to see these slides. Okay, so these 3 slides are definitely required. We want to learn, we want to simply know what you've learned in this hackathon, right? So definitely an important aspect, because despite whatever you've already made, I think one of the most important things is what you've learned, right? So, no matter what happens at the end of the day, if you take away something, that's absolutely amazing. So it kind of helps you reflect a little bit as well as what you did on the day. Capturing fun moments during the hackathon is also very, very important. So like basically this slide is like, just put in a little bit of like, a funny moment that you might have had, or like, an epiphany of like something that like, that happened during the hackathon. So, I mean, there's a lot of stuff. Like, for example, in one of my hackathons, like one of my teammates like gained control of my computer and like started clicking around and doing weird stuff. So like, just a fun moment, just to express like, just a good time, that you had a good time. And then finally, an appreciation slide for mentors, because, they're really coming out and like helping you all kind of create really good submissions. And it's important to show them appreciation as well. So definitely go ahead and, put in a slide kind of saying whatever you want to about your mentors, whatever good things you want to say. And that'll really help them out as well and make their day a little bit brighter. Okay, cool. So that's the main presentation that I kind of wanted to go over. Let's before I kind of show you my demo, another demo, I'm gonna go ahead and tell you very, very, very important presentation tips. Okay, this is like this sort of stuff that like takes like your presentation from a C tier to like an A tier, right? So very, very important. Definitely go ahead and implement these, right? So number one, elaborate on the problem. We really, really want to know why something needs to be done, right? So you wanna make it seem to the audience that like this needs to be solved and it's very urgent, right? And in order to do this, you might use data or personal stories. Is definitely something that we like to use when kind of elaborating on this problem statement. Okay, so the next thing is really presenting your solution, right? How do you even introduce your app, right? I struggled with that for like the first 2 hackathons that I went to, but then it sort of clicked, right? You need to present the solution as a savior to your problem, right? So think of a knight in shining armor again, right? Like it's really coming in and like, removing the problem for good, right? And so this falls in 2 aspects. Number one, like, your presentation, but also like just overall, like how does your solution actually address your problem well, right? So make sure that that's another thing that's very important. The last 2 things is less text, more images. And I'll get to the example. You can definitely see how that kind of plays out. But, definitely very, very important. Put way more images. And you can see that throughout this slide that I'm putting a lot more images. And finally, have a lot of energy in your voice, right? So you can see right now that like, even now I'm trying to really, make my voice really energetic and having those variations in my voice, very important, because if I find that you're excited, then the audience is excited as well. So definitely something to kind of keep in mind, okay? All right, so I think, should I present? I think
Sure.
I'm kind of running out of time.
Yeah. So just wanted to let you know that make sure that you connect with your team members and make sure they all attend on hackathon day. So if a team on hackathon day, the first thing in the morning is you'll have to check in. We'll send you an email with regards to the time when you have to check in. So we have a cutoff at that point when the people who have checked in can only participate in the hackathon. So make sure everybody, all your teammates check in before that. So, and if the team has 3 or 4 participants, then, you'll be participating in the hackathon as is in your respective teams. But if there's only like 2 people who show up in your team, then, we have to reassess on the day of the hackathon. So it's very important, make sure all your teammates are, going to, sign in for the timeline on the day of the hackathon, and the registration deadline on the day of the hackathon. And also, please keep checking your Discord periodically, and make sure that you're connecting with your teammates and your mentors. And if you whatever messages, please keep up with them. And you can move to the next slide.
Okay, great. There we go. And this is another reminder of the hackathon topics that we have. So fostering well-being, mental well-being, fun ways to celebrate during COVID, improving access to your healthcare, and fostering diversity and inclusion and belonging. Okay, so judging rubric stuff, we have 5 main categories that we're going to be really judging you on. Number 1 is ideation. So really like, is your idea good, right? Is it a good solution to the problem that you're trying to address? Number 2 is innovation, how creative you kind of are with your solution, right? How kind of out of the box is it to really kind of bring us something new and cool. Number 3 is technical functionality and design. So this is really, once again, kind of delving into like how your product actually looks at the end of the day. That's one thing that you need to keep in mind when kind of creating your project, is to make the design cool. Number 4, really presentation, branding, and marketing feasibility, right? So kind of going ahead and worrying about, this is mainly just based on your presentation, right? So kind of how well do we see your presentation? How well did you present your project? That's category number 4. And finally, the wow factor, really the differentiating factor that kind of helps us decide the good projects.
Yeah, one important thing we want to emphasize here is you want to make sure that every team member participates in the presentation. So you will get additional points for that, if everybody participates. So yeah, keep that in mind.
Yeah, actually, before I share this, I'll put that in the slide somewhere so that you remember extra points if everybody presents, right? So if everybody kind of equally splits up your presentation and presents that way, rather than just one person presenting. Okay, judging and prizes. So, the teams will be separated into 3 panels for judging based on project level, right? So, we want to make sure that this hackathon is equal opportunity, right? It's for everybody. So, we'll be kind of going across and kind of checking like what kind of level you guys fall under. And then after that, going ahead and having just judging based on that rather than just like everybody collectively, so that you all have a good chance of winning. Shooting Stars high school officers will come to each team's channel and get a summary of the project and will assess the level, right? So we're going to go ahead and actually assess your project based on what you've done so far and your idea and features and things like that. There will be 3 panels of judges for each of the project levels. Yeah. And then from each project level, we'll be selecting first and second prize winner. And the first prize winning team in each level will be asked to present their hack during the closing ceremony of the hackathon. So, if you're first place, really want to go ahead and show like what you've gone ahead and made so far. Okay, great. I don't know if I have time to present the other one, or should I just kind of hand it over to...
Go ahead and just show the app quickly so they can see the...
Yeah, for sure. So let me go ahead and, so, one way to do this hackathon is definitely to kind of do the website that I've kind of shown here, but you can also develop applications, and this is an example of an application that I made in another
When the
hackathon.
user first opens up a cross-platform application that runs on React Native, they'll register to make themselves an Eduvise account. In here, they can see their profile. In the store, the user can spend their tokens in order to buy a variety of gift cards and reap the fruits of their hard work. In the dashboard, users can connect their account to Khan Academy, NitroType, a tool that can help you increase your typing speed, Codecademy, a website that helps users master programming, and Duolingo, which can effectively teach teenagers new languages. In the leaderboard, things can get too competitive as students climb to be on the top of the token chart.
So yeah, that's a little bit about how an application might look. For that specific idea, if you guys are kind of wondering, that's mainly about we kind of want to tackle the issue of positive reinforcement. So how do you kind of motivate somebody to learn during a pandemic? And this is the idea that we kind of came up with, where parents kind of pay our service a certain fee every month, and students on the other hand, they really start working in Khan Academy and Fitbit and services like those, and as they work there, they gain tokens that they can go ahead and actually apply and use to buy gift cards. So that was general idea of kind of what we were going with.
All right, great. Thank you, Ansh.
No problem.
Yep. So I hope, this was to give you an idea of what is expected at the end of the hackathon, right? So you can, plan your project accordingly and manage your time so you can get to the end result. Yeah, now we will move on to the HTML session, which will be conducted by Ansh. Do you want to introduce the presenter?
Yeah, for sure. So the presenter is a friend of mine, Advait. Hey, Advait, are you here?
Yeah.
On your video. Hey.
Can you hear me?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead and take it away. I'm actually going to go ahead and remain in this meeting. Just give me 5 minutes to help answer any HTML questions on the side.
Yeah, no worries.
So Advait is also a Shooting Stars officer, and he's going to be conducting this session on HTML. And he's also going to be one of the technical mentors on the day of the hackathon.
So should I start now, or are we waiting for Ansh?
No, I think you can go ahead and start.
Okay. Yep.
Where are you from, Advait? Which city, school?
I can introduce myself. Hi, I'm Advait or Advait Agarwal. I'm an 11th grader. I live in Fremont. I go to Mission San Jose High School. I don't know if some of you may know about it. Yeah, so my interests include computer science. I'm planning on majoring in computer science or cybersecurity. Yeah, that's basically. Okay, so okay, so we will basically today what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be introducing the basics of HTML to you guys, so you guys can understand what it is and you can get a start. And then we'll be covering more stuff about it, I believe, tomorrow. Yeah. So let's start. Okay. So I already introduced myself, so we'll just get straight in. So basically, today we're basically learning about computer science, right? So computer science is the study of computers and computing processes. So when you write code, you're basically writing a line that the language. So basically, every time you write a command, that command is translated into computer code, so the computer can actually run something, right? So you can't just tell the computer to, for example, like, I don't know. The example that I was always given is like make a sandwich, right? You need to break it down into smaller parts. You need to tell it, do this first, take out the bread, put on the peanut butter, put on the jelly, whatever, right? So that's what coding languages do. They do it one command at a time. So I just put together a few examples. So like Python, the main uses are usually like web and game development and artificial intelligence and machine learning, though you can use it for other things, of course. Java, oh, by the way, I tend to talk fast. So if anybody wants me to slow down, just make sure you put in chat. Java, which is used for mobile, desktop, and web applications. JavaScript, which is used for user interface and web apps. C++, which is used for applications, animations, games, and then what we're covering today, HTML, which is used for web page design. So, HTML. So what is HTML, right? So HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. HTML is the standard language that we use to code web pages, right? Any web page that you open on Google, Chrome, Internet Explorer, whatever, will basically be a web page that's coded in HTML. The way it works is a server, basically anytime you type something into your search bar, that search is sent to a server, and the server responds with a web page that is sent to your browser, such as Internet Explorer or Chrome, right? And there's a lot of iterations of HTML, HTML1, HTML2, and so on. So every time they release one, it's of course better, like new iterations, right? So right now we're on HTML5, and that's what we'll be using. And here you can just see a small example of HTML. So as a lot of you may know, every time, or usually the first program that you write in any language will be a Hello World program. So this is just a really basic one. So we'll get more into it now. So first, let's get it set up. So can everybody just go to Google and search up repl.it? It would be great if you could do this now, but if you can't, make sure you take notes because this is a really useful resource for HTML. So let me. Okay. So when you get to repl.it, this is a screen you'll go with. You'll see, right? So if you already have an account, you can log in. If you don't, you're going to want to sign up. You can make an account by like using my Google account. Right? So here we have repl.it. When you first make an account, it'll ask you a few things about yourself, like what coding languages you're looking to do, whatever. You can just select wherever there's options. It doesn't matter too much. And the great thing about repl.it is you can put in any language. So even if you want to use it later for a different language, you can still use it. But for us, of course, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, right? So okay, so you're basically going to see this screen. So it'll give you an output area. The output area will basically be where your code actually, like the output of your code shows up. And here's your code, right? So right now, we don't really have anything in here, right? Oh, and the other cool thing you can do with this is you can basically copy this link and we can open this in a new page. So if you want other people to be able to open your project, if you code it here, you can give them this link and they'll be able to open it. Presentation. So basically, repl.it will run your code. You can use it to show other people, and you can also run HTML. You can also use HTML code, and you can run it locally but that's really not recommended, so I won't really be covering it. If you want to, you can always Google. Okay, so so far so good. Does anybody need me to wait for them to get REPL working? Okay, I'm gonna assume everybody has it working.
Yeah.
So now, what?
Yeah, sorry. One thing to kind of emphasize about REPL and the reason that we're really showing you to work with it is because it's super cool in terms of collaboration. It's literally like Google Docs, but like for code, right? So like you can actually go ahead and actually share this code, and you can see the share button in the top right, and people can actually work on the same code together. And you know, there's no confusion in that aspect. So definitely one of the reasons that we really want to show you.
Yeah, so if you just if you have somebody else part of your team who has an account, you can send them the link or you can invite them, and then they'll be able to code on the same document. So as Ansh said, it's basically Google Doc but for coding. Okay, so to start off, we're going to be covering the basics of HTML, right? So if you have any questions, I would ask that you guys wait till the end, because HTML, it's like we have to cover it in parts, but it really, you only really understand it once everything comes together. So to start off, we're going to basically be covering elements, two specific ones, paragraphs and headings, tags. So like what is an HTML tag, specifically the head and body tag, and then doc tag. And then we'll go into other stuff as well. So to start off, this is a basic line of code in HTML, right? So one element will be an individual, like a single component in your web page, right? So this can be anything. A paragraph, a heading, a table, a list, a division, a link, an image, anything that you have seen on a web page is an element, right? So let's look at this one element. If you look at this picture, you see, right? So to start off, we have this start tag. Don't worry about what a tag is, just know you have a starting tag, right? If you notice, it starts with a less than sign. You have P, which is the name of the tag. You have some info. You have the greater than symbol closes the tag. Then this is the content. This is what's actually inside the tag. Notice how you don't really have to put any quotes. It's assumed to be text. And this is the end of the tag. Now, if you notice, if you look at the start of the tag and the end of the tag, the only difference is that they added a slash. So in HTML, whenever you're writing an element, you're going to start with the tag, you're going to end with the tag, and the end tag will just be the start tag, but with a slash in front of it. Okay. So types of elements. So let's, like, for example, here we saw this tag, right? So let's look at what this means. So this tag is known as the paragraph tag. So if you want to just put a paragraph of text on your website, you would put this p tag, right? It's basically a way to structure your text. And what you're going to do is you're going to write the opening p tag, you're going to put your paragraph text, and then you're going to write the closing p tag. In the same way with headings, right? So here, instead of writing P, we're going to use H1, H2, H3, and so on. So heading 1 is the largest heading, and heading 6 is the smallest heading. Okay, and I think it will be beneficial if I show an example here, right? So if you see its screen, so let's just go here, right? If I type, and then I type, let's say, hi, my name Adways, right? And then I can type the closing slash, right? So now, if we run this, REPL does take a bit of time to load. Okay, so if you see what REPL actually takes a bit of time to load. So okay, you can see it now. Okay, that's fine. So if you see, the only thing that's showing up on our web page is hi, my name is Adway, because we added a paragraph right here, right? If we want to add a heading, we'll put H1, hi. This is a heading. Remember, you can put any words here. It doesn't have to be what I'm putting specifically, obviously. Okay, so again, we start with H1, we end with /H1, we run it, and then we see this is a heading. Now, remember, the way programs work is it reads from top to bottom. So if you want the heading to go before the paragraph, you'd want to put the paragraph below. Right? So that Okay. Yeah. So again, this is an example. If you wanted to print just to see, right? You would put H1, heading 1. So as you can see, the heading slowly decrease in size. That's because heading 1 is the largest, heading 6 is the smallest. Okay, so again, what we kind of covered, it's a bit out of order, sorry about that. But basically, as you can see, what we covered, tags, right? So the opening tag will be lesson symbol, the name of the tag, closing symbol, and then the closing tag will just have a slash, so a paragraph heading, as we covered. Okay, so now this is your basic structure of an HTML document. So you're going to start off with your doctype.html. So what doctype does is it basically tells the browser that this is an HTML document. And it also tells it what kind of HTML. So if you recall, I told you guys that there's HTML 1 through 5, right? So each one of those has slightly different commands, slightly different syntax, right? Different ways you do things. So in order for the browser to know which one we're talking about, we put this. Don't worry about what it means or anything. You just have to put this at the top of your document, right? So exclamation point, doctype in caps, and then HTML. This tells it that we're running in HTML5. And then you're going to put the opening HTML tag and the closing HTML tag. So this tells the computer that we're starting our web page, and this tells the user that we're ending our web page. Right? If we look at our REPL page, we have our doctype.html, and then we have our start HTML and end, right? And we can actually minimize this to see. So everything else, all of our code should always be inside the starting HTML and the closing HTML bracket. There should be nothing outside, except, of course, the doctype, right? Now, let's look at the second part. The second part will be head and body tags. So these are the next two subsections inside the HTML tag. If you notice here, I've shown, but if you notice, it starts with HTML, ends with HTML, and inside you'll put start head, end head tag, and then the start body, and then the end body tag. So if we look at REPL, we have our start head, end head, start body tag, and then the end body tag. And again, we can look, we can actually see, if we subtract this, all that info is inside the header tag, and all that info is inside the body tag. So for now, you shouldn't have anything outside of head and body. They should be inside this. And so the header tag, as you may know, a header in a document is like the very top of it, right? So that might be where you put like your name or your heading, right? So about the document, it's not the actual content itself. So if you notice, don't worry about these lines. These are just auto-generated lines. We don't have to worry about them for now. The only important thing is the title, right? So you see this title tag, opening title, closing title. And in between, we put REPL.it. So if you notice, when we go here, if you look at the very top where it tells you the name of the tab, it's called REPL.it. If I change this to my website and I run it, and we go here, and then we reload the page, you'll notice that it now says my website instead of REPL.it. So inside the header, for now, the only thing you're going to have to worry about is putting the title, right? Whatever your project name is, you probably want to call it that, right? Then let's look at the body tag. So the body tag will be the actual content of your website. So if you noticed, when I put those header and paragraph tags in here, I put them inside the body tag. Again, don't worry about the script src, that's just auto-generated. You don't have to worry about that for now, right? So everything I put is inside the body tag, right? I put header 1, paragraph 1. If we want to add something else, let's say after this paragraph, we want to add another header. We want it to be slightly smaller. So I'm going to say header 2, hi, this is another heading. When we run it, I will notice, look at this, it's slightly smaller than this one. So I think we can stop here for a second. Does anybody have any questions? So far, we've covered the basic structure of HTML and what a tag is basically. Okay, hi, is it possible to connect Java into HTML or Python? Yes, so I believe if you make like a program, I think Anj can go in more on this. I'm not fully sure, but if you make a program,
don't. It's really advanced.
yeah.
Don't
So
do that.
it's
Don't do that.
yeah. I don't think it's something that you guys really have to worry about for now. We can get to additional things at the very end, but I don't think that's really something you have to worry about right now. How do you
Yeah.
make your website name? Okay, let's look at here again. So if we look inside the head, so remember I told you guys the head tag is inside the head tag is the info about the website. It's not the content, but the info, right? So if we want to tell it the title inside this tag called title, we're going to put what we want. So let's say I want to say, let's say I want to say my hackathon project, right? I can run it and we'll see here, reload, it'll show up right here. Want to make it website again, we just put it back there, run it, reload, it'll show up here as well. And again, if you guys didn't catch that, you can see this output here, but this won't actually show you the title. So what I like to do is I just copy this link and I open it on my browser so I can see the effects. And make sure you're reloading. Like if you put some code here and then you run it and then you go to the website and you're like, why is it not showing me anything? It's probably because you didn't reload or because you didn't run. Because if you don't do those, it won't update. Okay, so I think we're good to move on. Don't worry, I'll be sharing the presentation with you guys. If you're confused, you can always go through it again. Yeah, and you can always ask questions at the end. Okay, so again, basically what I just showed you there, we have the opening HTML tag, the closing HTML tag. Inside this tag, we'll have the header, closing head, opening body, and then closing body, right? And of course, the doc type at the top. We already covered that. Okay, so now in HTML, after you know the basic structure, there's basically nothing else to learn. The only thing left to do is learn more tags. So you can think of it as a tag as a command, right? The tag will make a certain kind of element, right? So far, the only two elements we've covered are paragraphs and headers, as I just showed you. So now let's look at some other tags, right? So BR, if you put that tag, it'll basically create, it's an empty tag. So here we see how these ones have a closing tag. Here we won't have to put a closing tag. We just put opening or less than symbol, BR, greater than symbol. We don't have to put a closing tag. And what this will do is it'll just print a space, like it'll click enter basically. It'll create a new line. So if you just maybe put your heading and you want to put some space below it, you're going to put BR how many ever times you want. HR will do the same thing, except it'll actually show a line there. It won't just click enter. B is a way to format your text with bolded. I is a way to format it so it's slanted or italicized. And U makes it underlined. So again, you have REPL. So HR, right? So, and then right, so our bolded text is I if you notice, a lot of the tags are actually pretty self-explanatory, or they're kind of intuitive, right? Because if you see for bolded, we put a B. For slanted or italicized, we put actually I'm not sure. There you go. Oh, it's actually, sorry, that's my bad, guys. It's supposed to be an I. I think it might have. Okay, there we go, right? So if we notice, we'll see, hi, this is a heading. right? So we saw our horizontal line. If you notice here, we have a line that's going across. We put 2 break lines, and then we put another horizontal line. So that's the horizontal line. And then we added some bolded text, some slanted text, and some underlined text. If, for example, you want these 3 to be on separate lines, right? You don't want them to be on the same line. What you would do is you would just put this and we'll put BR, right? And if we run it now, look, you click enter, right? So now your slanted text is on a new line. Yeah, so pretty basic tags. Remember, in HTML, after you've learned the basic structure, which is already provided for you by REPL, the only thing you need to do is you just need to learn all these tags and the names of the tags. Okay, so now let's go into slightly more complicated tags. So just a quick question. Everybody understands the concept of a tag, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so I think we're good there. Let's, okay, so the next kind of tag. So this is slightly more complicated tag that you might use a bit more, right? So a list, right? In Google Docs, if we want to create a list, all we have to do is we just, right, we go here and we click like bullet points or unbullet points, but you can't do that in HTML. So instead, we define it as an ordered list or an unordered list. So for ordered list, the tag name is OL, and for unordered list, the tag is UL. So again, it's intuitive. U for unordered, and then list is just L, right? And then for every element inside that, so elements means basically, so like every bullet point you want inside the list, you put LI or list item. Actually, this shouldn't be element, this should be list. Okay, so let's look at an example of that. We can go here. We can have, let's do an unordered list. And remember, every list item is part of the list, so it should be inside the unordered list element, right? So inside here, we're gonna, let's say, create a list item, and we're gonna call it first item, right? Right? And then let's do that again. We can say, right? So that'll be your second item. And now if we were to just do this again, but we were to do it within this. Right, here we can put first item again, and here we can put second. Right? Now if we run it, we'll notice we have our unordered list, which just has bullet points, and then we have our ordered list, which has numbers. Now, you can add different kinds of bullet points like arrows and stuff, but I wouldn't worry about that for now. Just use the basics, right? And then, for example, if you want to add a title before there, what you could say is right before our unordered list, we can write this is a list of items, right? Right? So we have our this. We can actually just do. We have our this is a list of items. So that's the title of our list, and then we have our first item, our second item, and then we have our other 2 items. Okay. So guys, another thing, feel free if like when I ask you guys like understand, feel free to unmute and just say yeah, because you know that makes it a lot easier for me. I know I can move on and I know I don't have to explain it again. And if you do need me to explain it again, that's not an issue. Just say and then I can't explain it again. Okay, so are we good with lists? Would anybody like me to show? Okay. Okay, I think we're good with those then. Okay, so another thing. So like at this point, I'm just basically going through a list of tags, right? So another interesting tag that you might want to use is a hyperlink tag, okay? So a hyperlink is basically a link that leads to somewhere else on the internet. So a popular one is Google, right? So we want, anytime on a website you click on something and it takes you to a new place, that's a hyperlink. So how do you add that to your own website, right? So the syntax is going to be A. So A is the tag name. This is, we'll get into this later, but you just need to put href is equal to, so this will be the link to the page you want to go to. This will be basically whatever you want the word to show up as, and this will be the close ending of your tag. So our example here is href, the link for google.com, and then Google, right? So if we just take this, copy paste it, and we put it, for example, let's say we want to put it at the very top of our page, right? We're going to put it right here. We're going to click run. Okay, so now you see this, we have a link to Google. So we can make this larger, different colors, but again, that's later. For now, we just want to know how to put it in there, right? So if I click on this, okay, we click on this, it goes to google.com. I don't think links work through REPL, so you're going to want to open the page in a, right here, right? Yeah. So this is our web page. We click Google, it takes us to Google. So the main application of this is like at the very top of your page, you're gonna probably have a taskbar, right? Or like a navigation bar. So you'll write home, our team, our solution, contact us, whatever else, right? So if every time you create a new page, so it'll have its own REPL, right? So you'll go in, you'll create a new REPL, and you'll put that link and you'll put that as the hyperlink here, right? So that way, when you click on the button, it'll take you to that page. Yeah, that's like the main application of this. Any questions on links? Wait.
No.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so attributes. So now, this place where we wrote href is equal to like google.com, that's known as an attribute, right? So attributes are things that you add to tags, right? So let's go through some basic attributes. So the ID attribute will basically give the tag a unique ID. So I don't know if you guys have like any other coding experience, but for example, Java, if I want to say, I want to create a new variable, right? I'll say int x. So int is the name. So integer x is equal to 2. So the name of the variable is 2, right? So here, when I create a new variable in a sense, which is, for example, the unordered list, there's no way for me to know, right? If I create 2 unordered lists and I tell you, I tell the computer, make my unordered list bigger, it won't know which one to do it for. It'll do it to both. But let's say I only want one to get bigger, right? So that's why we give tags an ID. So we'll say ID is equal to tag 1, or we'll go into the syntax later, but you just need to know that, right? Background color is used to give a background color for a tag. Pretty intuitive again. Text, you can use this in the body tag to give color for the text. So if I say text equals whatever, it'll make the color in the body that. It'll make the text in the body that color. And then align, if we want it to be aligned to the left or to the right. So I have an example right here. So again, we have HTML head title, closing of the head, then starting in the body. So if you notice, inside the body tag, we first say BG color is equal to blue. So that makes the whole thing blue. Then we say text is equal to yellow. That makes all the text inside yellow. So if you notice, all the text is yellow. And then if we say ID is equal to body, we can use that later on when we learn more when we learn how to format our web pages, which is tomorrow, we can say body dot whatever, and then we can like set it so that anything with the ID body becomes green, for example, right? And then for the heading one, you see they said align equals right, and it put the heading to the right. So the main thing to notice here is you put the name of the attribute equals, and then you put single quotations and you put the keyword, right? So if you put something that's not a color here, it won't run. But what you can do is you can just Google HTML BG color inputs or something like that, right? So you can get a list. So a lot of them work, right? So if we made this red, green, whatever. So we can actually test that. So we can go into here, right? Let's find our body tag. We'll say BG color equals red, right? And if we run that, now our web page is red, right? And we can say text equals green. Okay, now we have green text. Of course, that's not very readable, so you probably wouldn't want to do that. Right, so that's pretty readable. Now, right, we can also use the align one. So you can do align for anything, right? So for the heading 2, we want to say align equals, right? If you notice, the heading went to the right. If instead we want it in the center, and we have a heading in the center, right? So for example, usually on a web page, you're going to want to center your first heading. So this is a way you can do this. In the same way, I think it works. Okay, so you can use it basically for your headings. I think the syntax for that's slightly different. Okay, so does everybody understand what an attribute is?
Yes.
Okay, and these are the examples of attributes. Remember, you can always, you don't have to memorize them. You can Google them. I'll be sharing the presentation as well, but these are a few examples. Okay. Okay, so now we're going to go into another very important tag. So this tag is a standard tag that you're always going to want to use, and this is called the div tag, right? So when you think of div, the first thing that comes to mind is division, or division as in a section, right? So the use of the div tag is to create sections in your code. So a lot of the time, when you just look at this, you may not really understand it, right? Because there's a lot in here. So what you want to do is you want to put divs in order to organize your code. And also, it makes it easier to refer, right? So like, for example, here I told you guys, you can set the ID equal to something, so you can later on format it, right? So you can say anything with the ID body, make that red, something like that, right? So in the same way, with a div, you can put a certain section of your code inside that div, and you can give that div a name. And you can identify that later and say, make this color. And we'll be going into that tomorrow with CSS. So we can try that here. For now, all you guys want to do is you basically want to, for example, right? So let's see. I can delete link. That, right? So this is, let's say, the start of my page, right? So I'm going to create a div. And I'm going to say, let's call this div. I want to be able to identify it. So I'm going to say, let's say, page title. Actually, let's call it intro, right? So we have the introduction. And let's say we want to end it right here, right? Because after the two headings, we're just going to put it /div. So now when we run our code, you'll notice nothing actually happened, except what it does. One thing that does actually happen is before the div and after the div, it'll add a space to like show a section. So that is something, but it's not actually changing much on the website itself. So make sure, so like we're not, right now, the only reason we're using it is to organize code. But later on, we'll go into more applications of this. So now you would be able to format this specifically, and you would say like this div, make that black or whatever, right? So like, for example, if I don't want all the text to be white, I want the first set of text to be red, then I want blue, then green. That's how I would do it. And again, don't worry about that now. We'll go into it later. I'm just introducing it now. So if you guys do start like trying out and trying to code something, make sure you use divs to organize your code. And I think that's basically all the tags I have. So then we're going to go into a bit more of like how to actually apply this on the hackathon side. So does anybody have any questions about any of the tags, attributes, any HTML we went over? Or does anybody want me to return to any of the previous slides? You can put in chat, you can say it out loud. Either way. Okay, so
DA, the hyperlink, right?
yeah. Oh, did you have a question? Or oh, okay. You can put it in the chat as well. So if we don't have questions, I'll move on. So let's look at how we actually get started. So a lot of people will just look, and you like a lot of the times this is very like hard because you just think there's so much to do, right? You look at a website and you're like, how do I start this? And that's an issue I've had a lot of times. So what you're gonna want to do first, one thing that I like to do is I have a whiteboard. So I like to first draw out my design, right? So I don't really have an example here, but you can just draw like a square and then or a rectangle, and then first you'll put like your nav bar, right? So you'll put like you'll write okay, home, table of contents, or contact us, our team, our solution, whatever your top part is. You're gonna write that down. Then you're gonna put like the title of your web page. Then you're gonna put what content. Don't write down what you're exactly going to put, right? Don't write the whole paragraph of text that you're going to put on your website. Just put it there as a placeholder. Make a structure for your website in your mind, or not in your mind, on a piece of paper or on anything, right? Another cool thing you could do if you just go to right? So we just go to Google Drawings. And this may seem simple, but it really does help you, right? So you're just going to drag out a shape. So this is our website, right? Now, for example, we want to put a nav bar. So we'll put a line here, right? And then we want to put some text. Here. Home page out. 3, 4, or whatever else, right? Drag it over here, right? So now you have your taskbar. Then you're gonna put like our project, right? And then you're gonna put like I don't know. So like you have, for example, things we did, and you're gonna put bullet points, right? And then you're gonna say things we right? So this is just a basic example I'm doing with what we kind of learned today. But you see, so this way now we know. So now when you go to code this, you're going to be like, okay, first I want to set the background color of my whole page to be blue, right? Then I want to say, okay, I want to add some text, a homepage text, an about us text, a link, or whatever else things you want. And I want to set it to take me to this link, to this link, to this link. Then I want to add a line in order to separate it. Then I want to add a heading. And this heading is going to be whatever, right? Then I want to add a list. So this way you can code it in sections. So it really helps you brainstorm for what you actually want to make, what your final product is going to look like. And then when you go back and you code it, it makes it a lot easier. Yeah, so that's about it. So I think what we're going to end off with is basically the online resources for HTML, right? So the number one resource in anything is always Google. It may seem obvious, but a lot of people will get confused and they'll end up asking somebody, a mentor, for help without even Googling it first, which there's no point to do it because Google has a lot of answers, right? So let's say, for example, I want to make a table, right? I really want to include a table in my website and I don't know how. So all I have to do is I have to Google how to add in a table to HTML. And if you notice, the very first link that will usually show up is going to be from this website, W3 Schools. And that's actually another resource I have. So we go to this link and look, it gives us an example, right? So, okay, actually, first of all, we just Google, we have all these various links, right? That can help us out. So then another resource, Stack Overflow. If any of you have coded before, you might know Stack Overflow is just a place where people post questions and then other people on the internet can respond. So if I just add Overflow to this, well, notice, okay, here's a link from Stack Overflow. Somebody asked a question. How can I create a table with the following layout? Because they want to create this kind of table, right? Now, you might have a similar question. So if you can just find somebody who asked a similar question, then look, people have included code and you can just copy paste it, or you can try to use this and create it on your own website. Our third resource is W3 Schools. So W3 Schools is a really, really, really great website because it tells you basically all about HTML, right? So if we go here, if we actually go to their homepage, you'll see that you can just go to Learn HTML. And look here, it gives you, if you look to the side, it just gives you everything, right? Headings. You want to create a certain kind of heading, it'll show us how to do that. If you forgot what elements are, what attributes are, you can just click here, you can read, and it'll tell you what they are. If you want to, for example, add a table, right? Okay, look, it shows you the example of the table. So this is what we want to create, right? You can click try it yourself, and it'll take you to a link with the same sort of editor, and it'll show you all the code it's using, right? So if you don't understand how they actually made this, you can see the code behind it. Okay, and then it'll explain, right? So we learn, okay, the table. So in order to make a table, we need the table tag, right? Each row is going to be under the TR tag, and each element is going to be under the TH tag, right? So we make a table, or you can just copy paste this. So style is an attribute for table. So this basically guarantees that table takes up the whole page, right? If we can actually copy paste this, guys. If we just go here, add our table, run it, we have our table right here. Of course, if you copy some of their formatting over as well, it'll format like that. But let's say we want, see how this, it goes all the way across, right? So I don't like how that looks. I want it to be slightly like, I want there to be border. So if I, the table style, and I make the width 50%, and I run it, it'll only take up half the page, right? And if I say, I think this works. Okay, there we go. So now we have a table in the center, and it only takes up half the page instead of the whole page. And again, you might be like, oh, it doesn't really look like this, right? But again, that's part of formatting, and we'll be going into that later. If you want to add a border, you can copy paste this code in. It'll add this slight edge to the end, right? It won't just be like an open table. If you want to give it some headings that are left aligned, if you want to add spacing. So basically, W3 Schools gives you documentation for every HTML command that you could possibly want, right? If I want to do something else, right? So like something more complicated, how to take user input in HTML. So a lot of you guys might be making like a website that you want people to log into. So for the purposes of this, since it's a demo, you don't actually have to like use that info. But if you want them to have like a space to input their name, right? So first name, or like I can make this username password, right? And John Doe. And if I submit this, the code that is giving you, you'll actually receive like F name is equal to John, L name is equal to Doe. You don't have to worry about using this. The main thing that you at least want to put on your website is going to be just this part, because like a login screen, right? Or an account making screen. So it'll tell you that the HTML element, the tag is called form. Inside, we can put various kinds of elements. If we want to input a text field like this, if you want buttons, if you want checkboxes, if you want to make a submit thing, or if we just want to make our own button, right? And we want that button to do a certain action. Text fields, whatever, right? So it's a really good resource. And I think the last thing is YouTube tutorials. So if you're like reading this and you're like, I have no idea what's going on, I don't understand this, then what you can do is how to implement tables. You can just go to videos, and instead you can just select a video. So if you look at this one, here we have a video, and it's fully, if you just go through the video, they show you exactly what to do, where to put each tag, and the output as well, right? One thing, one word of caution is like a lot of these videos will go into more complicated stuff, such as formatting. And again, don't worry about that for now. We'll be going over it later. If you do watch one of these, just look at how they're formatting their code, what tags they're using. That's the main thing that you want to look at. And then you can implement those in your own code. And yeah, that's about all I have, I think. Yeah. So does anybody have any questions? I can go over anything else. If you have any questions about REPL, I can try to answer those. Yeah.
So I was trying to get the web page to change colors.
Okay.
And every time I type in body with the little arrow in front of it, it's purple instead of blue. And it's
what part is purple? Body is purple?
Yeah, body is purple.
Okay. So that probably means, are you sure you're typing it inside? Oh, wait. Are you sure you're typing it inside of the HTML like tag?
I'm typing it inside of head.
Okay, so that is probably the issue. So if I go to a new REPL.
All right.
Right? So let's look here, right? So again, as I told you, head includes the information about the web page, just the title. That's the only thing that's going in here, not the actual content. Body is the actual content. So if you notice, body is actually outside of head. I can click enter to make it more obvious, right? Here's the head. This is the header. This is the body. They're two separate tags, right? So you want to type head and then the end tag for head, and you want to type your opening tag for body. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And inside here, you're going to type BG color is equal to blue. And if we run this, we have a blue screen.
All right.
So did that work for you?
I'm trying it right now. So I need to go to body.
BG color equals blue.
All right, let's body, BG color equal blue.
Make sure you put single quotes as well.
It worked.
Okay, that's nice.
Thank you.
Yeah, that is what I'm here for. I think we still have about 10 minutes. If anybody else is having any issues, make sure if you didn't make a REPL account yet, make sure you make it now. Make sure you make a new project. Like it's really simple, right? You just create a new HTML project, and make sure you share it with your team members. If any of your team members aren't here today, make sure they make a REPL account, and then you can share one. And even though you guys may not want to start on your actual website right now, you can just mess around. You can try out different tags, or you can try out the tags that we went over today. Yeah.
Will you
that
share
way-
Google Slides?
Yes, I think I will. Yeah, I'll definitely be sharing the Google Slides to the Discord or whatever. Everything.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. Okay. Does anybody else have any questions or confused about anything else? Okay, so I think we're good then. Yeah. Let me check.
Hi. Hi. Thank you, Advait. Thank you for that great session on HTML. And yeah, Advait is going to be available on the day of the hackathon, and he's going to give another presentation tomorrow as well. And also he's available on Discord. So if you have any questions as you keep trying, trying to develop some pages on websites, if you have any questions, you can always message him on Discord. And are you also able to provide your email, Advait?
Yeah, I can put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Okay, I put it in the chat. That's my personal email. It's probably better if you contact me on Discord, just because, yeah. I don't think I'm in the hackathon server. I'll get in that soon, but you can contact me from there, because I probably won't check my emails often.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So I guess then reaching out to him through Discord is the best option. And yeah, as you come up with the design of your project, and if you decided you want to go with a website, and if you decide to have certain features, you can start practicing them. The actual designing of your website and coding has to be done on the day of the hackathon, but you can practice those features that you need. Like if you need a certain button, if you're looking for certain colors, those could take time to search and find them on the day of the hackathon, right? So if you wanted to practice those things before, you can do so. And if you're having any trouble in any of those, trying any of those, yeah, reach out to Advait. And also, to any of the, if you send a message to @staff on the Discord channel, any of the other volunteers would also be able to pick up the question and be able to answer. And so, yeah, see you all tomorrow for the next next two technical sessions. So again, you'll have a Flutter session from 2 to 3:30 EST tomorrow, and then 3:30 to 5, again, you'll have a session on HTML. So yeah, looking forward to seeing you all tomorrow, and then again on the day of the hackathon on October 24th. In the meantime, we'll keep sending you communications on email, watch out for them, and also connect with your teams, connect with your mentor on Discord, and we hope to make sure that all of you have a fun time, as well as you're able to create a good project. Thank you. Have a wonderful evening.
Also, if you guys noticed, Enrique, I think, put a link in the chat. And if you go to that, you'll actually see basically what I'm showing you guys, that you can just send anybody this link and they'll be able to open the web page that you designed, which is really nice, because normally you would be coding it on your computer and then you could only run it on your computer, which limits how you can send it to people. Yeah. Oh, Enrique, did you have any question about the website specifically, or you're just sending? Yeah, you're welcome. Oh, also, if you guys have any, it doesn't have to be about HTML. If you have any questions about Java, I mostly code in Java, not Python stuff, mostly Java. If you have any questions about how to actually present during the hackathon, things like that, I can also help you guys with that. Okay, yep. You're welcome. I think that's all we have, right?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you, Advait. Have a wonderful evening. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye. See you guys.
Lata, are you there? Lata or Padma or Sailesh, do you want to?
Hi, Nalini. So you want me to close? I can close out the entire. So
Yeah,
just,
yeah. No, no, the YouTube streaming, right? Yeah, yeah. You need
yeah,
to
but I
stop.
can close out the Zoom call. Do you need the Zoom call?
No, no, no. We're done. Yeah.
If I close out the Zoom call, the live YouTube live will stop. Okay, I will close it out.
All right. Bye-bye.